I told Marcus I needed to sleep with other people before I could commit to forever, and now half our friends have me blocked on everything, while the other half share passive-aggressive memes about loyalty that are clearly about me. I know what the screenshots of my text look like: cold, cruel, deliberate, and I accept that I typed those words. But nobody understands that I was performing an act of love, so convoluted it became indistinguishable from betrayal. And the real confession isn't that I lied about wanting to be with other people. It's that I destroyed the only good thing in my life by trying to save it, and the truth I'm about to tell you will make you wish I'd actually just been cheating. The stakes weren't just my relationship, though losing Marcus felt like learning to breathe without lungs, but my entire identity as someone who could be trusted, loved, deemed worthy of human connection. I became a cautionary tale whispered among couples, the woman who asked for a hall pass and got locked out of her own home instead. What everyone gets wrong is they think I wanted freedom. In reality, I was so terrified of being a burden that I manufactured a scenario where he would hate me enough to let me save him from the worst parts of myself. And I haven't told anyone the full story because the full story makes me sound even more unhinged. I'm going to lay out exactly what happened, starting with the night I said those words, because the context rewrites the crime. There's a specific detail about the locks themselves, how he changed them, what he didn't find in my jewelry box when he did, that reveals everything, and I'll get to that. But you need to understand the domino chain first, how one small deception to protect someone becomes a performance so convincing you forget you're acting. The trouble started 6 months before the text, when Marcus lost his job as a commercial architect. At first, it seemed manageable. He had savings, I had steady freelance design clients, and his confidence was infectious. 3 months tops, he said, reheating leftovers in our tiny kitchen, and I'll be back in an office with a better view. I believed him because believing Marcus was my default setting. But by month 4, his savings evaporated, and the credit card statements started arriving with those subtle design changes. Thicker paper, bolder font, the quiet panic of companies demanding attention. I noticed he stopped opening them, stacking them face down on the microwave like a deck of losing cards. I was doing okay, but not okay enough to cover both our lives. My biggest client, a startup that paid late but paid well, had started ghosting my invoices. I picked up work on Fiverr, then Upwork, bidding on jobs that paid in exposure and misery. Marcus's depression filled the apartment like a gas leak. You couldn't see it, but it made everything heavier. He started drinking bourbon at 2 p.m., claiming it was a networking strategy. I found him on LinkedIn, not messaging contacts but scrolling through their vacation photos, his face lit by the blue screen of someone else's life. The small decision came on a Tuesday. I was folding laundry when his phone buzzed, a collections call. Marcus was in the shower, singing off-key to distract himself from the silence of no interview requests. I answered. The woman on the other end was professionally kind, the way people are when they're legally required to threaten you. She mentioned the balance, $47,000. The number lodged in my throat. When Marcus emerged, towel around his waist, I showed him the missed call notification. He didn't ask what they said. I didn't offer. That night, while he slept, I Googled how to pay off spouse's debt without them knowing, and felt the first click of the trap I was building for myself. I just wanted to buy him time until he found his footing. I didn't realize I was creating a story where I'd be the villain who thought she could be the hero. At 7%, the hook I decided he couldn't know I was saving him, because needing to be saved would break him more than the debt ever could. My first questionable decision came the following Monday. I accepted a retainer from a client I hated, a cryptocurrency bro who wanted his logo to feel like a boner, but classy, because he paid triple my rate. I told Marcus I was taking on more design work, which was technically true. The second decision came when I saw the night shift differential at the Amazon warehouse 3 blocks from our apartment, an extra $8 an hour after 11. I applied without mentioning it, reasoning that Marcus's pride had already cost us $400 in late fees. My third decision was the lie that made all other lies possible. When Marcus asked why I smelled like industrial cleaning fluid after my first shift, I said the startup's office had weird ventilation. He was too deep in his own shame spiral to question the obvious. The smell of warehouse sweat and chemical floor polish doesn't resemble any office building. The rationalization became my mantra. If he thought I was cheating, he wouldn't feel indebted. If he felt betrayed, he wouldn't feel weak. I was performing emotional jujitsu on the man I loved, using his pride as a weapon against his own best interests. When he found a receipt for energy drinks in my pocket, something I'd never drink, bought at 3 a.m. during my 15-minute break, I waved it off as a client meeting that ran late. The small consequence was the way he started watching me, his eyes tracking my movements like I was a glitch he couldn't debug. I dismissed it. People in love look for problems, I'd simply given him one he could understand. At hook 10, I doubled down. I created a fake contact in my phone, Jared from the bar, and sent myself flirty texts, just in case Marcus ever snooped. I needed him to find something, because finding nothing would make him question his own instincts, and that seemed crueler than the lie. By 13%, my sister Lara cornered me at our mother's birthday dinner. "You're always exhausted and you've lost weight. Are you okay?" I told her I'd taken on too much work, which was true enough to pass. She touched my hand, her fingers cold from holding her beer. "Marcus called me. He's worried you're having an affair." I laughed too loud, too long, and said, "Marcus is projecting because he feels like a failure." The words landed like a slap. My sister's face closed like a door. I had weaponized his vulnerability to protect my own, and I felt the first crack in my moral compass, a hairline fracture I chose to ignore. The first major revelation came 3 weeks later, when I'd paid off $12,000. I was transferring funds from my secret account when Marcus walked into the living room. I minimized the browser, but his reflection in the window caught the motion. "What are you hiding?" he asked, his voice flat. I showed him a mock-up for a client, which he didn't care about. The truth bomb landed later that night when I found him going through my laptop while I pretended to shower. He discovered my spreadsheet, not the debt payments, but my work schedule: warehouse 11 p.m. 7 a.m., design 8 am 4 p.m., client calls 5 p.m. 7 p.m. He thought I was managing 3 affairs. I let him. The relationship damage was immediate. He started sleeping on the couch, claiming my restlessness kept him awake, but I could hear him crying into the cushion at 3 a.m. through the thin wall. When I tried to explain, he held up his hand. "I don't want to know their names." My justification: "But you don't understand. I'm protecting you," died in my throat because he was right, he didn't understand, and I'd made sure he never would. At 18%, I revealed the hidden action. I had pawned my grandmother's engagement ring, the one I'd planned to reset for our own engagement, for the first $5,000. I told Marcus it was at the jeweler's, being cleaned. By 22%, my best friend Priya saw me leaving the warehouse in my safety vest. She pulled over, her car window rolling down like a judgment. "You're working a second job, does Marcus know?" I got in, the car smelling of her expensive perfume and my industrial musk. I told her everything, expecting relief. Instead, she stared at me like I'd grown another head. "You're lying to him about cheating so he won't know you're paying his bills. That's not love, that's a god complex with a side of martyrdom." She drove away, and I felt the first true consequence. Someone I loved now saw me as a stranger. At 24, I teased the worst secret, but that wasn't what made me unforgivable. The real sin came later, when I stopped pretending. The consequences escalated like a fire I'd lit in every room of our life. Marcus started posting lyrics from breakup songs at 2 a.m., which his mother screenshot and sent to me with question marks. I tried to make things right by leaning harder into the lie. I borrowed Priya's ex-boyfriend's cologne and sprayed it on my jacket before coming home. I created fake Instagram stories using stock photos of restaurants, geotagging them across town during my night shift. I was building a cathedral of deception, and each brick made the structure more unstable. His drinking got worse. Bourbon became vodka, which became anything with alcohol content. One night I found him asleep on the fire escape, his phone open to my fake jarred texts. I carried him inside, and he mumbled, "I knew you'd leave when I got poor." I almost told him then. But the hole was too deep, and I was still digging. At 28%, the spiral Marcus showed up at the address I geotagged in one of my fake date stories, a tapas bar downtown. I wasn't there, of course. I was at the warehouse scanning packages. He texted me a photo of the empty restaurant booth, captioned, "I hope he's worth it." I replied, "Don't do this to yourself," which he took as confirmation. He started drinking at the bar, ran up a tab he couldn't pay, and had to call his mother for a ride. She left me a voicemail: "You've killed him." I had. By 32%, I made my worst decision. I hacked his email password, a variation of my name and our anniversary he'd used since college, and deleted the automated credit card statements before he could see the zero balances. I told myself I was preserving the surprise for when I could finally reveal the whole truth, a grand gesture that would rewrite our story. Instead, I was erasing the only evidence that might have exonerated me. At 35, the breadcrumb, the money wasn't just from the warehouse job. I whispered to myself in the bathroom mirror at 4 a.m., and the clients weren't just for design. The breaking point stretched across weeks that felt like years. I was working 80-hour weeks, my body becoming a stranger, hair falling out, nails splitting, a twitch in my left eye that never stopped. I fell asleep during a client presentation, my head hitting the desk, and lost the Crypto Bros account. He posted about unprofessional women who can't handle success, and my other clients started slipping away. Marcus's mother hired a private investigator, a fact I learned when a man with a telephoto lens started appearing across the street from our building. I was pushing 80 pounds of cardboard through a scanner when my phone buzzed with a text from Lara. "I'm done enabling your breakdown. Call me when you're ready to be honest." She'd been my emergency contact for the warehouse. They'd called her when I fainted on the floor during a shift. She knew. 42%, the major confrontation. Marcus printed out photos the Pi had taken me leaving the warehouse, me getting into Priya's ex's car. It asked him for a ride when my bike got a flat, me at a coffee shop with a man in a suit. "I have proof," he said, his voice hollow. The proof was of my lie, but he thought it was proof of my betrayal. I looked at the photos, at my own exhausted face, and said, "It's not what you think." He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "That's what everyone says." By 48, my support system crumbled completely. Lara changed her Netflix password, which we shared and texted. "When you stop performing tragedy and start living truth, you can have it back." It was such a small thing, but it gutted me. The password was our deceased father's birthday. She was erasing me from our shared history. At 53, someone got hurt. Marcus totaled his car driving drunk at noon on a Wednesday. He wasn't injured miraculously, but the police report listed marital problems as his stated reason for drinking. His mother posted a GoFundMe for the tow fees, tagging me in it with a broken heart emoji. The comments filled with speculation. She was cheating with a rich guy. Classic, men work, women twerk. I paid the tow fees directly, anonymously, but everyone knew it was me. At 58, he asked the direct question. We were standing in the kitchen, the silence between us thick as tar, when he said, "Just tell me, is there someone else?" I had so many chances to tell the truth, to say, "Yes, there are many someones, debt collectors, warehouse supervisors, escort clients, but not the someone you think." Instead, I looked at the floor and said, "Yes." I gave him the gift of certainty, knowing it was the one thing that would let him walk away clean. At 61, I set up the final revelation, but the locks were the least of what I'd locked away. I told myself while packing a bag after he left for his mother's. The real lock was on a truth that would make the cheating seem kind. The worst truth revealed itself in stages, each more damning than the last. I started with the easy part, the part I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. I'd been working a second job. Marcus just stared at me, his face a mask. "I know," he said. "The Pi found your pay stubs." The full confession began at 67%, not as a grand reveal but as a quiet surrender. "I told you I was sleeping around," I said, "because I was, just not the way you think." I explained the warehouse, the design work, the debt. I showed him the secret account, the payments I'd made. His expression didn't change. "That doesn't explain the dates," he said. "The hotel charges on your card." 72%, the most damning detail. Some of them weren't just design clients, I admitted, my voice cracking. I started escorting, not street walking, high-end, agency-based, companionship dates for businessmen, sometimes more. The words landed like stones in a pond sinking fast. "You wanted me to think you were cheating," he said slowly, "so you actually became a prostitute to pay my bills." The reframing was complete. My performance of betrayal had required me to become a betrayer. The debt was gone, but I'd created a different kind of obligation, one measured in acts I couldn't undo. By 77, the first major consequence hit. One of my clients, a real estate developer, recognized Marcus from a photo in our apartment. He contacted him through LinkedIn, offering condolences on your loss, assuming we'd broken up. Marcus traced the man's agency affiliation and found my working name, my reviews professional, discreet, oddly maternal in her concern for my well-being. He forwarded everything to my mother, who called me sobbing, "My baby, selling herself like meat." At 80%, the final shoe dropped. Marcus found the spreadsheet. Not the debt one, the other one, where I'd meticulously tracked each encounter, each payment, each act, with notes like Client 7, 800, didn't kiss, felt nothing, and Client 12, 2000, cried after, used money for Marcus's Amex. He printed it and mailed it to everyone in our wedding folder. 200 people invited to a celebration that never happened, now receiving a catalog of how I'd finance their would-be son-in-law's freedom. The cover letter just said, "She did this for me, now you know what that costs." The aftermath was a scorched earth campaign on my identity. My freelance business collapsed within days. The Crypto Bros post had already primed the pump, but the escort revelation flooded the engine. Clients I'd worked with for years sent awkward termination emails citing brand alignment concerns. My Instagram, which I'd carefully curated as a designer's aesthetic dream, was screenshotted and shared in industry groups with captions like, "Would you hire her?" And "She looks professional, but..." The social media element became its own living organism, a creature that fed on my attempts at explanation and grew stronger with each denial. Marcus moved back in with his mother, who had the locks changed legally since my name wasn't on the lease. I'd been so focused on paying his debts, I never protected my right to the space we shared. The irony was a physical taste, metallic and constant. His credit score, rather than improving with the paid-off balances, actually dropped because the sudden large payments flagged as potential fraud. He had to file disputes, prove his identity, relive the humiliation of my help over and over. My sacrifice had become his burden. At 85%, the unexpected consequence, my sister, who'd finally softened enough to let me crash on her couch, told me I had to attend a support group or leave. Not for sex work, she clarified, for pathological lying. The group was called Pathways to Authenticity, and I sat in a circle with people who'd fabricated cancer diagnoses, stolen identities, created fake children. I was the only one who destroyed my life by trying to preserve someone else's. By 89, genuine self-awareness broke through during a group session. A woman talked about creating a fake pregnancy to keep her boyfriend from leaving. "I didn't want to trap him," she said. "I wanted to be needed." The facilitator, a stone-faced therapist named Diane, replied, "You didn't save the relationship, you performed a rescue fantasy to avoid being the one who needed saving." I stopped breathing. That was it. The whole ugly, shimmering truth. I hadn't saved Marcus from debt. I'd saved myself from having to admit I was terrified of being with someone who might need me to be strong. So I made myself the problem. I became the villain because villains don't have to be reliable. They don't have to show up. They get to leave. At 92, my current state, I'm living in a studio apartment above a bodega, the kind of place where the shower is in the kitchen and the radiator screams all night. I attend SWOP meetings twice a month, learning to unlearn the shame I weaponized against myself. I have one client left, a nonprofit that doesn't know my history and doesn't ask why I'm available at weird hours. Marcus and I communicate through his mother. She forwards me updates he's working again, junior architect at a small firm, going to therapy. He's dating someone, a teacher, stable and kind. I pay him monthly installments, anonymous e-transfers labeled reimbursement. He accepts them. That's our only contact. The reason I'm telling this story now at 95% is last week I saw him at the coffee shop below my apartment. He was with the teacher and she was laughing at something he said, her hand on his forearm. He looked lighter, unburdened. I was in sweatpants buying a discounted day-old muffin, and I realized the locks were never the punishment. They were the gift I couldn't give him directly release. He changed them while I was out because I'd finally given him permission to protect himself from me. What I've learned is imperfect and incomplete. You cannot save someone by becoming a version of yourself they would never choose. My intentions were a kaleidoscope of selflessness and ego, and the pattern kept shifting. I thought I was sacrificing, but I was escaping. I thought I was being strong, but I was fracturing. The moral ambiguity is that some small part of me still believes the debt is gone, and that matters. But the larger part knows I sold pieces of myself for a currency that doesn't exist, pride without consequence, help without vulnerability, love without risk. I'm telling you this because I need the story to belong to someone else now. I've carried it like a tumor, letting it grow in the dark. Let it be yours to judge, dissect, learn from. Maybe you'll see yourself in my rationalizations, or maybe you'll just feel superior, which is its own kind of relief. Either way, I finally understand that the locks weren't keeping me out. They were keeping the parts of me I'd sold from contaminating the life he'd rebuilt. He changed them while I was out, and for the first time since I typed those words, I can admit he was right to do it.